Imagine standing in complete silence. Your hands are shaking. Your spear is still buried deep inside the largest animal you've ever seen. The mammoth doesn't move. Its enormous chest rises one final time, then stops. For a moment, nobody celebrates. The hunt is over. But something far more difficult has just begun. Around you, your family slowly steps closer. The children stare with wide eyes. The elders remain silent. Everyone is thinking the same thing. Now what? The animal lying before you weighs nearly 6 tons. It's larger than your shelter. Larger than any fire you've ever built. Larger than anything your family has ever owned. You cannot carry it home. You cannot leave it behind. And every minute you wait, the smell of fresh blood spreads farther across the Ice Age landscape. Somewhere beyond the hills, wolves are already lifting their noses. Bears may soon arrive. Even distant scavenger birds are beginning to circle overhead. This isn't the end of the hunt. It's the beginning of a race against time. Because for ancient hunters, killing a mammoth wasn't the greatest challenge. Keeping it was. Chapter 1. The biggest meal on Earth. To modern eyes, a mammoth looks like a prehistoric elephant. But to an Ice Age family, it was something entirely different. It was food. Warmth, shelter, tools, clothing, fuel, survival. A single adult woolly mammoth could weigh between 4 and 6 metric tons. Not all of that weight was edible. Bones, skin, organs, and other tissues made up a large portion. Even so, researchers estimate that one healthy mammoth could provide thousands of kilograms of usable material, including a remarkable amount of meat and fat. For a small hunter-gatherer band, that represented an extraordinary opportunity, but also an enormous problem, because meat doesn't stay fresh forever, especially after an animal this large dies. Even in cold climates, the countdown begins immediately. Bacteria begin breaking down tissue. The weather changes. Scavengers appear. Every passing hour makes preserving the animal more difficult. The hunters knew this. Even if they couldn't explain it scientifically, experience had already taught them the lesson. Move quickly, or lose everything. No one wasted time celebrating. Stone blades came out almost immediately. The first cuts were careful, not because the hunters were hesitant, but because every mistake mattered. A damaged hide could mean weaker clothing. Broken bones could destroy valuable raw material. Poorly cut meat could spoil more quickly. Nothing about this job was random. It was a skill refined over countless generations. Children watched closely, not because they could help much yet, but because one day, they would need to know exactly what to do. Knowledge passed from eyes to hands to memory. Long before anyone wrote books, human survival depended on watching carefully. The mammoth wasn't simply an animal anymore. It had become an entire season's worth of decisions. And every decision mattered, because somewhere beyond the frozen horizon, the Ice Age was already sending its next challenge. And the real race against time begins. The first sound wasn't a growl. It was the wind. Cold air swept across the open grassland, carrying the scent of fresh blood farther than any hunter could imagine. The mammoth was dead. But the Ice Age had already noticed. The hunters didn't waste a single moment. Stone knives flashed in the afternoon light. The oldest hunters stepped forward first. Years of experience had taught them exactly where to begin. A careless cut could ruin valuable meat. A deep slash could damage the thick hide. Every movement had a purpose. This wasn't butchering. It was survival. Children stood nearby, watching every motion in complete silence. No one explained the process. There were no lessons. No classrooms. The hunt itself was the classroom. Every cut became another memory that would one day save a life. Modern archaeologists have discovered stone tools with microscopic wear patterns and animal remains showing systematic butchering, suggesting prehistoric hunters developed surprisingly efficient techniques for processing large animal. Exactly how each group worked probably differed from region to region. But the goal was always the same. Work quickly. Waste nothing. Stay alive. Soon, the first heavy strips of meat were lifted away. They were far too heavy for one person. 2. Sometimes 3 people carried each piece together. The strongest hunters focused on cutting. Others gathered the meat. The women organized piles according to use. Children collected smaller scraps that would otherwise be lost. Even the elders had a role. They watched the surrounding landscape. Someone always looked for danger. Because the hunters knew, they were no longer alone. A raven landed on a nearby rock. Another joined it. Within minutes, more black birds circled overhead. To modern people, they were simply scavengers. To Ice Age hunters, they were a warning. If birds had found the mammoth, larger predators wouldn't be far behind. The tribe worked even faster. The enormous hide was carefully peeled away. It wasn't just skin. It would become shelter, blankets, wind protection, perhaps even the roof over a family's home. Nothing could be damaged. Nothing could be wasted. Next came the thick layers of fat. Today, many people avoid animal fat, adamants. But during the Ice Age, fat could be even more valuable than meat. It provided enormous amounts of energy. It burned longer. It helped people survive freezing winters when food became scarce. For hungry children, a small piece of fat could mean another day of life. As the sun slowly moved across the sky, the giant mammoth looked smaller and smaller, not because it had shrunk, but because human cooperation was transforming it. Every person knew their responsibility. No one could finish this job alone. That may have been humanity's greatest advantage. Not sharper teeth, not greater strength, but teamwork. Anthropologists believe cooperation on demanding tasks like processing very large animals may have strengthened social bonds and encouraged knowledge sharing within early human communities. Success belonged to the group, never to a single hunter. Yet another problem was already approaching, not from the ground, but from the sky. The number of circling birds kept growing. Their shadows crossed the mammoth again, as if the heavens themselves were counting down. The hunters understood exactly what that meant. The scavengers had arrived first. The predators would come next. And night was getting closer. The mammoth that fed a generation. The sun disappeared behind the frozen hills. Long shadows stretched across the grassland. The hunters had worked without stopping for hours. But the mammoth was still far too large to finish before nightfall. Then, the wolves appeared. At first, only 2 glowing eyes. Then another pair. Then another. Silent gray figures emerged from the darkness. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were waiting. They understood something. Humans understood too. Sooner or later, someone would make a mistake. The hunters quickly dragged the most valuable meat closer to their temporary camp. Large fires were built around the remaining carcass. Flames weren't just for warmth anymore. They became a wall, a warning, a message to every predator in the valley. This belongs to us. The children stayed close to their mothers. No one wandered away. No one wandered away. Even while exhausted, someone always stood guard. For thousands of generations, night after a successful hunt may have been just as dangerous as the hunt itself. Modern archaeological evidence suggests that many hunter-gatherer groups worked together to transport, process, and protect valuable food resources. Exactly how each group defended a large carcass is impossible to know, but cooperation almost certainly increased their chances of success. By the following morning, the real work continued. Nothing was thrown away. The thick hide became warm clothing, blankets, shelter coverings, even rope. The powerful tendons became strong cord for tying stone tools and spear points. The enormous bones became digging tools, building supports, and sometimes fuel where firewood was scarce. The curved tusks became valuable raw material for carving tools, needles, artwork, and ceremonial objects. Even the stomach and organs had uses. What modern people might call waste. Ice Age families often called survival. One mammoth could provide far more than food. It became an entire resource library. Every part carried value. Every part solved another problem. This extraordinary efficiency wasn't simply intelligence. It was necessity. Nothing could be wasted because wasting resources often meant risking the next winter. Scientists have discovered prehistoric camps containing mammoth bones arranged into shelters, along with tools made from ivory and evidence of systematic butchering. These discoveries suggest that mammoths supported human life in many different ways beyond providing meat alone. But perhaps the greatest gift wasn't the mammoth itself. It was what the hunt taught the people. No single hunter could kill, harry, protect, or process an animal this enormous alone. Success depended on trust, planning, communication, patience. Parents taught children, children watched elders. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Long before written language, humanity's greatest library existed inside memory. Every successful hunt became another lesson. Every mistake became another warning. Over thousands of years, those lessons slowly shaped the way humans lived together. Perhaps that was the true reward of the mammoth. Not simply a full stomach, but stronger communities, greater cooperation, and a future built on shared knowledge. Today, most of us buy food without ever wondering where it came from. A single trip to the grocery store replaces weeks of danger that our ancestors once faced. Yet every shared meal, every family gathering, every tradition of preparing food together may carry echoes from those distant Ice Age camps. The mammoth is gone, but the behaviors it helped shape, cooperation, planning, sharing, still live within us. Because the greatest prize after a mammoth hunt was never the meat alone. It was the people who survived together. And perhaps, that has always been humanity's greatest strength. The story of the mammoth isn't really about extinction. It's about adaptation. It's about cooperation. And it's a reminder that the greatest victories in human history were never won by individuals. They were won by families who learned to survive together.